So the EU, once upon a time it began as the European Steel and Coal Community, which started about 1951. And since that point, it's gradually emerged. It's gradually developed. It became the European Economic Community under the Treaty of Rome in 1957. In 1992, the single market was created under the Maastricht Treaty. Then, the Euro area and so on. Yeah, so kind of what is, but from an economic perspective, what I mean, obviously there are political angles to this, that I don't really want to get into here, but what is the EU? And I think there are three main things that we're thinking about. Firstly, firstly, it is a single market. Yeah. So since 1992, and the Maastricht Treaty, there are four freedoms that come with this idea of being a single market. And the idea is that it should be as easy to do any economic activity in one market country as it is in another. So the four freedoms are free movement of goods. So there are no restrictions. If you can make something, so every country has the same quality standard. They're agreed under the EU. Therefore, if you make it in one country, you can sell it in another. Same with services. There are no restrictions on, for example, financial services. So goods and services are traded completely freely. There are no restrictions on flows, therefore, of financial capital. By the same logic. And very importantly, there is free movement of labour. So within the EU, you have the right to live or work or retire wherever it is that you want to within the EU. So if I'm a German citizen, I can live and work in Germany, I can live and work in France, I can live and work in Spain, any one of these places. So therefore, it is a genuine single market, not just in the market for goods, but in financial markets, and in labour markets as well. Secondly, the EU is a fiscal entity. So whilst it's not huge, the EU does have a budget, to which member states contribute, and so there is kind of a fee for being part of the EU. So you have to contribute a proportion of GDP. So therefore, how much you contribute depends on your size. The EU budget stands, somewhere in the kind of 200 billion euro market, which maybe sounds a lot, but bear in mind that the UK alone, its budget is these days heading up towards 2.5 trillion euros. So the UK alone's budget is 10 times the size of the EU's. Nevertheless, nor is it an insignificant amount of money. And that budget can then be spent in areas within member states. So it is spent on regional development. So areas that have particularly high unemployment or are viewed as having very weak infrastructure. So that's not necessarily countries. Well, it is countries, but it's kind of zones within countries, particular target areas. There's quite a lot still goes on agriculture. There's quite a bit goes on science, research and development. And of course the environment. So the EU, in addition to being a single market, it also has a fiscal entry. So it's also a fiscal entity. It has a budget of its own. And finally, because it is fundamentally a club. So you as we're saying down here, you kind of pay to be part of it, but you can't just join. There are what are called the Copenhagen criteria for new member states who want to join. If you want to join the EU, then you have to meet these criteria before you join, and existing countries will therefore have met these countries. One is that you have stable political institutions and guarantee of human rights. And this is important when we talk about EU expansion, as we will in a minute. Because if you want to join, then you're going to have to clean up government is one thing. Two, you have to have a strong market economy. So it's got to be a functioning market economy that's going to be able to cope, with competition once you enter the EU. And thirdly, this is also very important. You have to accept all existing EU law. Not just accept it, you have to pass it yourself. So all of the EU law that's been passed since the 1950s, a new member state has to have on its statute books. So I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about kind of criminal law here. We're talking about kind of economic law, fundamentally law, kind of some human rights law, some labour law, and so on and so forth. Again, to create that idea of a single market, we need to have the same laws in all these places. So that's what the EU is. It's a fiscal entity, it's a single market, and it's a club that has rules in order to join.